Welcome to this Bodyweight Roundtable. We are joined today by Joshua Naterman, a qualified medical practitioner and co-founder of LabCoat Fitness that has long been on the gymnastic strength training scene. Yaad Mohammad, he is also a co-founder of LabCoat Fitness, a gymnastic strength athlete and a medical student. Philip Chubb, aka the Mindful Mover on Instagram. He has a wealth of knowledge in the bodyweight weightlifting and mobility scene, as well as being a near lifelong practitioner of martial arts. Philip runs an online coaching business with his wife Martina. And lastly, Tom Merrick, aka the Bodyweight Warrior on YouTube and Instagram. He's an avid practitioner of gymnastic strength, hand balancing, and mobility training, and uses his experience to help others explore these movements and make them more accessible. Welcome, gentlemen. And I want to start with this question. What do you guys see as a difference between bodyweight training, gymnastic strength training for general fitness? And what separates that from the people that do it to become elite competitors? And we'll start with Phil.
Oh, thank you. So, I think the difference is when you are working with people who are trying to achieve the absolute highest, like world record breaking, Olympics, gold medal competitions, those sorts of things, your goal now becomes to squeeze every single bit of performance out of that person, no matter what cost, no matter what they have to give up. It's about winning the gold medal, no matter what. So when you are working with someone like that, your programming will have to shift at that point to try to emphasize that as best as you can. And it's really hard to know those sorts of things in every single case because everyone's different. Everyone's got different recovery abilities, and life is different for everyone, of course, et cetera, et cetera. With someone who's like, no, in general fitness, you don't have to worry about that as much. They're just trying to get stronger, look good, do some cool skills, and generally have, like, look good naked, that kind of thing. So the bar for perfection is set a lot lower when you work with that kind of person.
Tom, what do you think?
Yeah, I generally agree with that. I think the focus is basically on either, when you're programming for something, it's like you're either focusing on adherence for the person who just is doing it generally. So it's like, how can you make something that somebody's going to stick to and enjoy doing? And then for somebody who wants to be like absolute peak top, it's more about what's going to, they're prepared to make the sacrifice that's needed to get to that point. So it's just, it ends up being two completely different ends of the spectrum, but also much of the same thing.
Yeah, do you think it's more about, or anyone can jump in here, do you think it's more about lowering your expectations if you're a general fitness practitioner using bodyweight strength?
I was just about to add
Or
that.
do you think that it is simply just doing everything less? So kind of to summarize that, if you're a general fitness practitioner, is it about doing everything less, difficulty less, training frequency less, or is it just about scaling your expectations of what you can get out of your training and still be training, say, 4 or 5 days a week?
Well, that's a very interesting question, and I think something I always do when I have an athlete that I train or when I just train myself is I look at the athlete and I ask them, hey, what do you want to do? And how much are you prepared to sacrifice? Because it's as simple as that. If they want to become the best, whether they're a professional or not, if they want to become the best, they want to become the best. And I will try my best to make them the best. And I need to know how much time they have. If they only have 3 days a week, well, the expectations need to be lower then. So it depends sort of on how much time do they have and how good are they willing to become. And based on that, we need to set expectations. So these expectations are something you need to be very transparent about. So you can't just have an athlete come and be like, hey, you'll get your full planche in 1 year. It doesn't work like that. You need to know, and that's also what Philip sort of pointed at. It's different per person. It also depends on.
You're telling me Instagram?
Yeah, Instagram has been lying.
Get my planche in 30 days.
Sorry. It's very unlikely.
It's all about making people feel like you're going to give them whatever they ask for, right? Like, so it seems. But the truth is that, you know, a good coach, whatever you want to call the person, is going to figure out what that person's life is like and fit themselves into what that person wants to dedicate to their fitness. And that doesn't have to be the same all the time. It can adjust based on the time of the year or from one year to the next. If they have 2 jobs versus 1 job, I mean, you know, and you do have to change kind of expectations, and but only in the sense that, you know, like I never know what somebody's going to accomplish until they show me. You know, there are people who do better on 4 days a week, even at the Olympic level, than the majority who work 6 or 7 days a week. And so you never really know until you find out with them. And I think that a lot of us historically have kind of made the mistake of doing too much at first rather than starting low and working up. Like, you kind of have to figure out what somebody's boundaries are early on if they have high expectations for themselves. If they don't, you really just kind of have to figure out what is going to get results from them, and that's usually pretty easy. And then from there, you know, they can just kind of keep working with that, and they may go through a period where they decide to figure it out. But I think the challenge with working with regular people is different from the challenge of working with like elite athletes, because regular people have all these extra stressors. You know, we have more bills typically, we have less secure housing, at least in most countries. We have, you know, we don't really necessarily know where our paycheck's coming from because we're not a pro athlete. We don't have like that contract in. The economy, as recent events have shown us, is a lot more changeable than we like to believe. And, you know, we usually don't have a whole lot of money in the bank. So, like, there's all these stresses that are on, and you have to meal prep. You don't have, like, the cook who's doing it for the team. You don't have, like, physical therapists and this and that and the other. There's no support staff. It's like you, your online coach, or your in-person coach or whatever, and, like, McDonald's fast food. You know what I mean? Like, that's a little bit of an you know, it's not totally true, but, like, you get what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And so the challenge is to figure out what that means.
Sorry, Josh. How about staying on that topic of expectations? We can always look at any sport or anything and see that different people are going to have different results. That's just how it is. It can be in any sport. But I think all of us can acknowledge that that is never more true for bodyweight training, in that there's more variables that are impacting each individual's success or progression. Like, just looking at something like the planche, not only is it, are you an elite athlete or are you just general practitioner, but it's also your height. It's also how long your arms are to your torso. Tom,
I mean, you can say the same thing for powerlifting, really. You know, body segmental differences make the difference between a championship bencher and a championship deadlifter, you know. But, you know, so yeah. I think that applies to a lot of
But this is the Bodyweight Roundtable, Josh.
Yeah, but I think that if you want to try and demarcate bodyweight training as having like even more challenges, I don't know that that's true, at least not for the basic strength part. For skills and for like street workout competition, I do think that that's true, for sure. So I think the more you get into it, the more that you start getting into a lot more fine motor stuff, especially with more advanced things. I think for basic strength, I don't know that it's that much different. You know, because the way that you approach getting results is really not fundamentally different. You're just using different exercises to do it.
Tom, how have you ran into issues, or how have you managed clients' expectations in terms of just having different bodies, heights, weights?
Just accept your garbage, as Mikhail would say, and expect nothing, and then you can't be disappointed.
Hey, that's a good approach, not gonna lie. That's a good approach. It works.
Because I mean, you were like Tom and
no, I think I would always say like 18 months would be a reasonable expectation that I would set to people. Like, whatever you think you're going to do, give it 18 months, and then you'll probably see some progress towards it. I'm not going to say you're going to get it, but like, that's kind of the time frame you want to be thinking about. Like, you don't want to be thinking about what you can be doing for the next 3 to 6 months. Like, okay, what am I going to do for the next year plus?
How about if someone comes to you with, say, a goal like full planche, a gold medal, a 300 kilo back squat? Are you immediately managing, like sticking with that bodyweight example, but are you coaching them towards that, or are you going, no, pull it back, tuck planche, local competition?
Yeah, I always give people. Yeah, I would always give people like process goals rather than like end goals. So just like figure out some metric to put on it that's like a stepping stone towards the point. Because oftentimes with the planche or front lever or everything, it's gonna be like several years before you get close to that point, and it's very just demotivating when you've been working for something for 3 years and you're not at the point in which you want to get at. But actually, when you take a look at the overall progress, it's quite substantial, even when it's just movement quality rather than like, okay, you're still doing a tuck front lever, but the tuck front lever and what it used to look like and what it looks like now is way better. So I don't know. It's one of those ones that to be honest with you, the coach obviously can help, but I feel like a person tends to have that appreciation or not. If you get the sort of person who wants to do something quickly and they don't see the progress, they're just not going to stick with it because they don't care for that, and they're going to bounce off to the next thing. But the people who do have the appreciation for the long-term process and sticking and being consistent, then they're the people who are going to stick around with you.
Yeah. And Phil, we know that you have to simplify your approach to coaching, you like to try and simplify people's approach to training. Do you find that when people come to you with, say, a goal like an iron cross or a full planche or a Maltese, for example, are you trying to change their mind to bring them back to your big five, or are you trying to adapt to what their goals are and help them along the way?
So if people have a goal that will be basically achieved on the way there, what I tell them is, look, there's 2 ways we can do this. One way, let's take like a muscle up, for example. It's like one way we can do is we can work on things like dips, we can work on the muscle up transition and the false grip pull up, and you'll probably get the muscle up pretty soon. Or option 2, we work on the big 5. So the big 5 strength exercises that I talk about a lot. And you will make gains on all 5 of those exercises. Oh, and guess what? You'll turn around one day on your journey and be like, hey, a muscle up. I'll put that in my pocket and I'll walk over with it. So, and I tell people at that point, simply let me know which one you want to do. I find that most of the time, most people are like, I'll take the other route that gives me the free gains. Occasionally I have a person who's like, well, I got a competition for like, CrossFit or something like that, so I really need muscle ups. So I'm like, okay, at that point, let's do the direct path because you're trying to win a competition. That's a little bit different. I'm not going to make you go through the big 5 when your competition involves you need to be able to do muscle ups. But most people who are like, general people who just want to get stronger, look better, that kind of thing, a lot of them choose, okay, I'll take the route that maybe it's even a little bit longer, but over the course of the time, I'm going to turn around with like 10 times more gains. A lot of people choose that one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I actually, in to a large part, I think that Philip has, really hit on something pretty important. That when your basic strength is being done correctly, you tend to see really broad improvement across. I won't say across like every single thing, because like I know Philip had a great Instagram post about like the one arm handstand and stuff. Like there are certain things that have to be done directly, but when it comes to a lot of the strength oriented stuff, if you're getting stronger as a whole, you tend to make progress without a whole lot of direct work. The direct work is really more like just proving to yourself that you're making progress rather than actually using it to make progress specifically. And I think that that's something that's really worth kind of marinating on, because it changes the way that you approach things. And we're also very big on, trying to get people to understand that, because it makes a difference. It takes away frustrations and you get to do, so much more with your body. And I think most people have fun with that. And like Philip said, I agree. There's times when, depending on how far out someone is from a competition or something, you may need to get really specific. But I would say that I would agree with him that that's more of a like targeted decision for a specific athlete, and not a general, but not the best thing for the general public, or even for athletes in general who don't have a competition just over the horizon. Like if they're 2 years out from their first competition, there's no reason for them to be doing muscle up specific stuff. Like that makes absolutely no sense.
No, I think that's just a great example of what Josh and Philip are talking about. I myself haven't done much specific one-arm pull-up work, but I have been doing weighted pull-ups. I have been working on my basic strength, like weighted push-ups, etc., and just all these things. And at one point, I decided to, hey, let's check out what my one-arm pull-ups are like. Let's see how much I can do, and I could do 9 reps in a row. And the 3 years before, I remember struggling with 3. I was struggling with 3.
Left the chat.
I'm see you later, guys.
No, but my point with this is I hadn't done specific work, but in the meantime I was progressing in our so we don't have the big 5, Philip. We have more like a big 6 or 7. So we have a few lifts that we focus on. So we have like vertical push, horizontal push, but it's sort of the same approach.
Four main movement planes.
Yeah, it's like
horizontal push, horizontal pull, vertical push, vertical
right.
pull.
For the upper body.
And then people can choose different exercises based on what works best for them. It's
Where
pretty similar, honestly.
Where would you fit the dip into vertical or horizontal push?
Okay, wait. So before Josh gets into it, I'll just drop my.
Oh my god.
So this gets complicated. There's a lot of emotions in this one. So, depending on how you do your dips, and I actually have I could actually show you dips here, but for the sake of the audience listeners, I'll just talk about it. Depending on how you do your dip, it changes the exercise. So if you lean forward a little bit, you can, and if you look at the movement, it sort of looks like a decline bench press. It's more close to that movement. So if you do a dip like that, it's more towards the horizontal press area. So I would consider it a horizontal press. But is it the best exercise for your horizontal press exercise selection? I would say no. I'm a much bigger fan of weighted push-ups. But the problem with weighted push-ups is it gets very impractical after a while. After a while, it's really hard to load that without having anyone with you. And most of the time, I train alone. So I decided for myself, either I do flat bench press or I do dips and flat bench or incline bench press, which is also a great one. But I decided on dipping for this period because it just feels good, and I felt like doing something new. I was kind of tired of incline bench pressing. So yeah, sometimes novelty is a great reason to change an exercise because it makes the workouts more fun. And then it might not be the greatest exercise because dips do have some cons to it, but in my case, it's working out. Does that answer your question?
I just thought I'd throw that one out there because
yeah.
it's just one of those ones that I think it got chucked in my Facebook group recently, and there was like 100 comments on it of people arguing whether the dip was vertical or horizontal.
Yeah,
and I was like, oh.
I would say it's horizontal.
I would say horizontal. So.
And like the way that I break it down is that the dip is not really going to help you lift something up over your head, and it's not going to do a whole lot for your overhead press other than like tricep strength. Yeah. And the other, because you're not doing any upward scapular rotation. The biggest difference between like what Yaad is doing, which is going to be more of now he's just showing off. But sorry. No, it's like so he mentioned you can change the focus between like triceps and chest, but either way you're not really doing a whole lot for upper traps. You're not doing a whole lot for lower traps. You're not doing a whole lot for like the upward rotation and sort of the upper half of serratus anterior. And that's kind of getting into details that I don't really like to talk about too much because I think they derail people into thinking the wrong way. But for a technical discussion, like that's sort of the way that I look at it. And even though your body is moving up and down, the muscles that you're really developing and the motor pattern that you're developing is really just a variant of a decline press. And that's okay. Like, that doesn't make it a bad exercise. I loved dips. I
wasn't saying it was bad. It was more just like the classification of it and stuff.
Yeah. But there are a lot of people who do say it's bad. So.
It is interesting, though, that, people get so emotional over it.
I think one thing that I like about all you guys is at one point in time, at least once for all of you, I've seen you guys change your mind in terms of what is optimal for training. And whilst that seems logical to do, I think you can find a lot of people that don't do that. They stay set in their ways. And whilst all of us found bodyweight training as trainees, practitioners, all of us have gone on to coach as well. So I wanted to ask, starting with Phil, as a coach and as a trainee, what have been the biggest mistakes that you've made as a trainee and a coach? And what have you done to, if you could go back, how would you fix them?
I think I missed part of the question.
As a coach and as a trainee, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Yeah, as a coach and a trainee, what have been your biggest mistakes that you've made, and what would you change or fix if you could go back?
So I would get a time machine, and I would go back in time and find myself and slap myself across the face for thinking that more work automatically equaled more results. If I could go back and change that, like, all my programming would change. Like, I think if I could even just go back and tell myself, hey, think about like Wolverine, who can like heal instantaneously. He could probably work out and then adapt to his workout, and then go work out again 5 minutes later and adapt to that, and then like in 5 minutes time he's able to squat.
It's like walk around as a giant bicep with legs.
Yeah. But then at the same time, when you think about it, it would be kind of awesome, right? But then it would kind of suck because you would reach your genetic limit in like a day, like then you're no more training, you're done. but I think
you ruined this for me.
I think if I could like go back and tell myself that, like, it's not about like how more is better, it's like what you can recover from and get back in the gym and train again. Now we're talking, but for a lot of people, that amount is not as high as they think it is, especially just like, as Josh mentioned, most general people have, a job that requires 40 hours a week or more, and then bills that, are maybe getting paid, maybe aren't getting paid, especially during this time. They've got worries, they've got kids, they've got like, a spouse or two or three, different like, side people they're working with, trying to keep them finding each other. Like, the list goes on. There's so much stress.
Most side chicks are really stressful.
It's hard. It's hard stuff. So I think that's probably the problem. I would go back and tell myself, like, keep recovery in mind. More is not better if you can't recover from it. If it just breaks you down and kills you, and you take a trip aboard the pain train, more doesn't help at that point. More slows you down.
Yeah, recovery is so underestimated, dude. Which is a whole different conversation. But
does anyone have any mistakes they've made that don't involve training hard?
I did the same thing. Like when I was in, university, I was training like 6 days a week, 3 hours a day, and now I do like maybe, I don't know, a quarter of that, and I'm getting better progress than I did then, and I'm not injured. It's like, it's a no-brainer. I feel like consistency was very underrated, and underrated by people, because it's usually a cheap sell in the fitness industry. Like, oh look, a different exercise with some weird twist to it. It looks good for Instagram or something, but actually in practicality reasons it's useless. It's like, I used to write myself a new program every week just because I liked writing programs, but I made no progress because I didn't do anything for a consistent enough period. I was just on that variability hype. So yeah, if just choose something and stick to it.
Mm-hmm. For a while at least.
I have a similar experience with the Stronger Bodyweight Workout Series 2. So the second series, Niall Wilson helped to put the program together, and it was so much training, and there was also heaps of variety packed into that as well. So there was just so much going on every week. And by the end of the 12 weeks, I had a forearm injury and a cold and a cough developing. But I have to say, with that program, I made a lot of progress. But the thing is, I think I could have made as significant progress with less training as well. But I haven't tested the same goals with less training, but I can't knock that more training was completely ineffective, because I definitely did get stronger. I got better, but I'm skeptical as to whether that much is what's needed to make the gains.
It's really hard to zero in if you haven't done kind of a personal assessment of like sort of a very regimented volume increase from week to week so that you can figure out when is my performance starting to really get impacted day after day. Like, everybody has a bad day, but if you finish your week and start the next week and you still suck and you're not getting any better and you're like slipping, you have crossed a threshold that you should not cross. That threshold is the point at which that should be the new endpoint. And so then you stretch the programming out so that, you then do that over another, whatever sounds best to you, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 4 weeks, I don't care. And then you do the same thing again so that you start zeroing in on what the kind of recovery that your lifestyle can actually support, whatever you're doing. And that way you learn a lot about yourself and you can figure out, okay, how do I pack this work in without doing too much? And that's a tough thing to do because it takes time, I mean, you have to figure that probably would take a minimum of 2 to 3 cycles. I expect people, if they're really, like, we try to do something like that with the way that we approach things, and I tend to expect it to take about 6 months for people to kind of really figure out on both a volume side and an intensity side what their boundaries are. The goal is that we try and actively coach, say, okay, this is when you stop now. I don't care that you're not on week 6 or whatever. This is now you're not feeling right. So I just want you to maybe repeat, like take one step back and repeat that week, and you should not feel any worse. If they're insisting on finishing like the 6-week cycle or whatever. If not, then I'd rather have them just deload there for a couple of days to a week and then start over on week 1 again. And this time, whatever that week 4 or 5 or whatever it is where they went too far, at that point, that should be their new week 6 volume, and they should just stretch that out so that it takes them 6 weeks to reach that point. Because that way they are not going too far, but they're sort of getting to that kind of, they'll be moving a little bit past like their maximum adaptive volume, but they won't be going to the point where they're really hitting a negative in a sense. Does that make sense? Because that's not necessary. You don't have to be in a hole in order to make progress. That actually is counterproductive, but it's really hard to find that on your own. And that's where all having somebody who's helping you really makes a big difference.
I've actually found that trying to just... Oh, sorry, Phil. Go on, you go.
Oh, okay.
I was going to say that...
What?
I love when this happens. Keep going.
It's
Tom's
far
British,
too British.
that's,
Go on.
that's
After
fine.
you, good sir. You go first.
So piggybacking off what Zod said, I feel like that's like a great approach. Like you try an amount and you kind of test and see what amount is needed. Where's better, play around with it. But I feel like a lot of times with people when they write their own programs, trainees, they don't want to do that amount and find what that amount is. It's almost like a lot of people have that kind of anxiety of missing, of testing for even 1 week. It's like, no, I can't waste a single week, a single cycle on possibly not making gains. So I'm just going to jump right to 10 sets of every exercise to ensure that I gain. You know what I mean? I feel like that testing is oftentimes missing, which is, I think, one of the reasons why coaching can be so valuable, just to have someone sit there and be like, look, we're going to test this. I know it's scary in the short run. In the long run, you'll be really happy you did. But if you don't do it, you're going to jump into doing 100 sets per week right away because you've got FOMO and anxiety, and then you're going to get hurt, and then you're going to be in pain for the rest of your life. That kind of thing.
How about you?
Yeah, I think that kind of coaching is really, really, really
Tom
important.
Jump in now.
I'm sorry.
Tom,
I was going to
please.
say that I feel like... I completely agree, but I feel like sticking to the week structure is the issue. So if, for example, there's a 6-week phase, and in that phase there's maybe 12 workouts that you're going to repeat. Sometimes, rather than trying to stick to the week, if you just feel like you're under-recovered and you've got too much volume, I just take an extra day of rest. So then, and maybe a 6-week program actually ends up lasting 7.5, 8 weeks. It's more about the repeats of the sessions and the adequate rest in between. And it kind of almost, when I say this to some people, they come back to me at different points and they almost find that personal amount of volume naturally, not through changing how much they're doing per session, but more changing the amount of time between sessions, and just being like, okay, you don't have to do this on a Monday. You can do this whenever you're next feeling recovered enough to handle it.
That's a pretty cool approach.
Love that.
Yeah.
I love that. You keep other variables the same. You just kind of like add more rest days. Yeah. I love that. I use that same approach.
Yeah. Sorry, mate. You cut out.
Yaad, have you had any major mistakes in terms of coaching that if you could go back and change, you would do? Or do you just kind of look at those mistakes as trial and error as to becoming a better mentor, better coach?
Well, let's take me, for example, because I'm better at coaching other people than coaching myself. I've had several occasions where, so often in our programming, we have periods where we do boring work, basic strength. And then basically we have this golden era within the year, which is the skill cycle era. And during this period, it's like you can always scroll through my Instagram. You'll see me like doing dips, multis, dips, Victoria. Like it's like that's when I start. That's when I'm in my skill area. And during the skill area, that's when I suddenly start unlocking my skills again. So my full planche is back again, and then I'm starting to mess around with like planche presses, etc. During that period, it's always been very hard for myself to not stick to the program. I always look at the program, I see 3 holds, but the 3rd hold was so good. So I got to add a 4th and a 5th, and a 6th and a 7th and an 8th, and you keep adding and adding and adding. And it's basically, you get super excited. And this has happened multiple times in my training, because I've been training for almost 10 years now. And I remember this happening in my 3rd year and 4th and 6th year. Those were when I had huge strength peaks. And then in my 8th year, I didn't do that anymore. In my 8th year, I was actually, for the first time, I was like, no, I'm good. And now around my 10th year, even if I hit a PR and I know I can get a better one at the next set, I just stick to the program. And I feel like it's always been my biggest mistake, is not sticking to the program because I get so excited. And one of the things that's very difficult for me, and I feel like some people in the calisthenics world also have this, is I love working out. I love it so much that I hate resting. I hate it so much. I know that I could do less work and get maybe... I know adding a day won't probably get me more gains or maybe even diminishing returns, but dude, I get to work out an extra day, which has always been another difficult thing for me, because at the end of the day, for me, it's never been about the results. It's been about the workouts. I just love working out. So a solution that I've come up with is I take the volume, and rather than doing them over 4 days, I just spread them out through 6-7 days. So it's short bursts of workouts, but I get to look forward to something every day, and I get to have structure in my day. And that's been something that has been working really well for me. So rather than 4 days, I do now 6-7 days of small little workouts, little bites.
Right. But the key is not using those days to actually do more total work.
Yeah. It sucks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was, and you're right. I think the last time that you really, one of my favorite things over the years has been like watching people find those moments where they're like, oh yeah, it is okay to never do more than the program says. Like,
yeah.
2020. And I remember that last time you got excited because you were like, oh my God, I can just planche like anytime I want. This is bananas. I don't understand.
Yeah, I was planche spamming.
And then you hurt yourself.
I was planche spamming. I was literally walking outside and be like, planche. And I planched everywhere. I planched for people. Yeah, it was bad. It was a bad idea. But I must say, 2020 was the only year I had 0 injuries. And it's also the year, the only thing that happened was I caught COVID, which that's the only thing that affected my training. But otherwise, 2020, 0 injuries, and the year where I did the most stressful movements, like the hardest movements I've ever done. So I'm kind of proud of that. Like, I'm finally getting there, guys. It took me 10 years, but fuck. Yeah, but
yeah.
I'll go on.
Yeah, but that's a struggle. That's a struggle.
Oh yeah, sorry.
Yeah, I was going to use this opportunity to... Oh, did you have something to say, Tom?
No, I was just agreeing.
Okay. I'm going to use this opportunity to insert the question I wanted to ask since I did the podcast with Josh. And it could be like a 1-minute conversation because I don't know how much experience any of us have in researching this or being around people, but PEDs or performance enhancing drugs in calisthenics, have you guys got any thoughts on that? If even performance enhancing drugs like anabolic steroids would help to get people to bodyweight skills faster. Like, is clenbuterol good for Maltese? And is trenbuterol good for the Victorian?
Well, son, sit down.
What?
And
Let me tell you,
And
one of the scariest things
Josh,
about those.
who I wanted to ask initially, let's put it to Josh first. Your thoughts on PEDs in calisthenics? Effective, not effective? Elaborate.
Well, I think you have a couple of problems with just sort of boxing it in one. I mean, I think that just like in any other scenario, they're going to do what they say they're going to do, and you're going to get stronger faster. I think that when you're doing a lot of high leverage work, meaning things where your body is not in really disadvantaged positions, that's a little bit less of a problem. But it's really common for people who take steroids, especially for extended periods of time, to have muscle tears and some tendon issues. And one of the reasons for that is that you do have some, and I'm not going to I'm going to try not to dive like neck deep into the science and just sort of toe in it, but like you're changing gene expression in all of your body tissues. And one of the things that changes is that you do get some suppression of some of the collagen subchains. So like, I think it's like 1A or 1B or something like that. One of the components of type 1 collagen.
If you're struggling, that's too deep.
Yeah,
you can't remember, that's too deep.
Your tendon. So here's the problem. So here, let me sum it up. The issue is that you run the risk of developing muscles that are getting stronger with tendons that are proportionally not getting as strong. It's not so much that you're making your tendons weaker, but you're putting things out of balance because your muscles in your tendon experience the exact same forces every time you do anything. But when you're increasing your muscles' ability to adapt to things, and it's all that tissue is forming, we'll just say correctly, but you're also enhancing tendon formation, but it's not being done quite the way that it used to be, you can run into some problems. And then that's my biggest concern in terms of injuries. I think if you're not getting a lot of money, there's a lot of medical risk that comes with taking steroids, especially when you cannot have a doctor supervising you. People don't realize that after like 6 months, most people have like these weird vascular formations in their livers that can rupture if you get into a car accident. They go away most of the time if you're off for, a while. But it's more than just cholesterol and heart disease. You're changing a lot of things. You're making it, a little bit easier to bleed. You're having a lot of things go on that it's really hard to know who's who. I mean, it's not like we're going in and getting like liver ultrasounds every 6 months or anything. You know what I mean? Like it's so I think that because people don't really know what like all the things that steroids can do, both positive and negative, they don't really understand that like if you can basically get everything you want without them, why would you use them? You know what I mean? So like if you got millions of dollars on the line and you're going in the NFL and you're up against genetic elites and like 40% of them or whatever are using something, and you are going to need to do something to keep up with them, and you're going to make an extra $18 million over the next 4 years, I can see why you would do it. But I don't see why you would do it just because you want to be stronger than the person next to you in the gym, or because you think that the guy in the
Instagram
magazine
followers,
with like
man.
400 extra veins on their forearm, you want to, you know what I mean? Like I get that people get these weird mental images of what they could be and what's cool, but I think you have to take a step back and look at the sort of safety profile too and say, is it worth it?
Yeah,
I don't think that they're super common in body weight stuff.
Go on.
I don't know about street workout. I wonder a lot because you
Yeah.
occasionally see these people who come from nowhere and they're around for a couple of years and then they're gone. Like what happened?
Yeah.
I don't
Every
know.
day was heart day, bro.
No, you know what? I really think because there's some people who just get strong so fast, and like my body always adapted really well. And kind of looking at the old, like that last question, like my biggest mistake, not so much even doing too much, because I was pretty good about knowing my limits, so to speak, but I always stayed at them, and that was a big mistake. I never gave myself like the time off, and I never really organized my training. I didn't have like the knowledge and the experience that I have now, and I wish that I had done better with that. But I'm glad that I never screwed around with like any of the performance enhancing stuff. I thought about it. I mean, I think that anybody who says they haven't thought about it, there's a fair number of people who are telling the truth, but there's a fair number who are lying to you because they're embarrassed that they thought about it at some point. And there's a lot of lies. There's these websites. I got kicked off of one of their Facebooks a while ago because, they're like, these aren't steroids, but they work just like steroids. And I'm like, listen, man, if I put a sticker over the word, over the letter T and tell you this is an Oyota, not a Toyota, until you take the sticker off, bro, I'm lying to your face. I'm lying to you. And that's what they're doing. They're selling steroids that just have a non-registered chemical structure until their liver hits it, and then it's a steroid. It's a steroid. It has all the risks.
If I can just cut in there, Josh, I think even though Tom was joking before saying about Instagram, one thing I've found interesting is that there is like clout to be gained from being the best in terms of calisthenics and
Or just
bodyweight.
jacked.
And being lean because that.
That was me.
Yeah. What was that?
Okay, but yes,
Mechagodzilla.
just to hop in a little bit, you can utilize steroids in different ways, of course. It really depends on how much you're using and when you're using it in your cycles. So, for example, if you are in your hypertrophy cycle, PADs will help a lot as a calisthenics athlete, because that was the question. Like, will using steroids enhance your calisthenics skills? Yeah, if you use it smartly, yeah, and if you make sure that you account for connective tissue, that it takes a bit longer in like proportion to the muscles growing. Yeah, if you take all that into consideration, people who do take steroids will have a super big advantage over the people who don't. But again, like Josh mentioned, there are a lot of cons to it too. But it also depends on how much you use. Which is another thing. So it's the amount is also very, very important. And I know a lot of calisthenics athletes use them and don't talk about them using it. But some of them are just super, super obvious. I'm not gonna mention names, but some are just super obvious. Like,
I don't care. Like,
come on, dude.
If you're gonna use
and then some
like
people are
steroids
freaks.
or performance enhancing drugs, just own the fact that you're gonna use it. Just say like,
right.
I'm on some gear. Like, that's not. I don't find that. Like, if I find it worse if you lie about using gear and you're clearly using gear. I'd have more respect for the person if they're like, I'm taking gear, but I'm still a beast. I'm like, yeah, you're a beast.
Well, but it's deceiving. Especially if you're selling a program, then you're a shithead. Then I don't have respect for you, because if you're selling a program and you are like marketing with the idea that this body is created with this program, then fuck you. Like, that's not cool. Yeah, but that's not true. But if you're just, if you're using steroids and you don't want to talk about it, and you're not selling anything, you're just doing your thing, yeah, okay, I can see that. You don't have to tell us. I get it, because that makes sense. But if you're selling program, dude, fuck you. Like, that's not okay. Like, I'm not okay with that, because that's just deceiving. You're just not selling what you're selling.
No.
Don't you think the tricky thing is, though, because they're illegal? Like,
yeah.
Yes, you should just be honest, but I think there's a not just a taboo, but a certain legal ramification if you were just like, I'm openly taking.
Well, there are smart ways to go around that. Well, something I saw, Mike Isertel, I don't know if you guys know him, but he's super smart guy. He's about my height, but he's 100 kilos. I'm like 63 something. By the way, I'm 167.
He's like a foot wider than Yaad.
Yeah, he's literally a foot wider than me.
It's crazy.
This guy, so in his comment section, you'll see many people asking, like, are you on gear? Like, everyone knows, of course, you can't be that size. But what he always answers is, I can't tell. I can't tell you. Which is basically saying, or he responds with, roids are illegal.
He's very open about it.
Like, Yeah, and then so everyone's like, "Oh, okay, cool, thanks."
It's like, yes,
true.
we take special sports supplements, and like when
Yeah.
he's talking about himself and some other athletes and stuff,
Just taking
and,
BCAAs, that's it.
who are self-reporting, like, yes, they crossed over to the enhanced realm, and after 10 years of natural training and getting to a point where they're like, I'm probably just about maxed out, but I want to be bigger. And it's like, you know what? If that's what you want, then that's cool. I'm not trying to low key shit on them. It's fine. I mean, they know the risks. They're smart people. They're using a lot less than other people, which doesn't necessarily make it safer. There's something called a class effect, where just being exposed to something creates the risk. And then there's dose response and risks associated with that. And both of those play into it, but they're okay with those risks, and they are probably doing what they can to monitor regularly, whether it's with private labs or, where they're just checking their cholesterol every 3 or 6 months with LabCorp or whatever, they accept the risk. They're an individual. And I think it kind of sucks that a doctor can't supervise that because it's illegal. I think a lot of people are getting hurt because of that, just because people got upset that their baseball players were taking steroids. That's what it really was about. That's crazy to me. That's a terrible reason.
That's
and even if they were legal, I would not suggest that people do them, but I would understand in certain situations, and I would really want to try and make sure they were safe. And if I saw a problem, I'd be like, yo, we need to put this on hold for 8 months. You know what I mean? You're entering a bad spot here, and it's no good.
Phil, I think this is the world before.
Oh no, you're fine. You're fine. Yeah, I totally agree there. Where it's I think it would probably go a lot better if they could actually be monitored by doctors, and you might have people not suffering such effects. Honestly, look, if you go to the highest level of all these different sports, you're probably gonna find some usage there. And honestly, I really don't blame anybody for it at that level. It's if that's how you put food on the table, go ahead. And honestly, I think another thing too is we, the people watching our sports, we have this really double standard for our athletes, where it's I want our records broken, but I want you to do it cleanly. And it's dude, I don't care. It's I'm trying to see what the most amazing human can do, regardless of whatever they're on. I don't care. Just show me the fastest 100-meter dash, the highest jump, whatever. So when it comes to that kind of stuff, reaching the full levels, the highest level possible, okay. Me personally, and I think for most of the people I would ever probably am ever going to run into training, because I don't train Olympic athletes, so anybody I'm going to run into, I'm probably going to tell them I like the things that steroids would take away. For example, Josh mentioned that if you get into a car accident, you could rupture your liver. I really like my ability to get into car accidents and not rupture my liver. And I'd like to.
I love that that's an ability.
I'll take one of those.
Some good free games there.
Phil's I've tested this, I know. You have to test things, set it on Instagram.
I always test everything. I've been in 2 car accidents, and my liver has never ruptured. So given that
dude,
there,
he's walking the fucking talk. Damn.
There's too much.
Sorry,
there's too much trade-off. There's too much trade-off to me. It's not something I think anybody should be touching if they're just trying to make some gains and enjoy life. If you're trying to put food on the table at the highest elite level, and you're going to be at a significant disadvantage because everyone else is doing it, whatever. No, I don't judge there. But if you're at if you're just a normal person doing it, I'm that's a lot of risk, in my opinion, for something that you're not even going to get recognized or paid for.
Yeah, well, and people have this illusion that it's going to turn them into Superman or Superwoman or something, and it's if you're not already elite, it's not going to magically make you elite. That's the icing on the cake for those people. They would still kick everybody's ass without them. You know what I mean? That's the crazy thing, is there's people who are so gifted that it's hard to understand until you have watched them in front of you in real life. Videos do not do those people justice. It really it does not. I had this kid, I'm not saying he was the most gifted kid ever, but he was one of the ones who I think for sure could have been like a national track athlete if he was more focused. He was like this, it was during some summer football practice stuff, and right before I started med school, I was helping out with the strength and conditioning, and I was having the kids do a bunch of stuff and like teaching themselves. And anyways, I was watching them doing some drills, and this kid every single time, like his first step took him like it's 7 or 8 feet forward on sprints. It didn't make sense. I mean, it was like he had a rocket engine inside him, and he wasn't even trying, And it was crazy, like watching him run and watching the rest of the kids. And there were some fast kids there. There were some kids who had legit like 4 or 5 40s. And in high school, that's insane. But this kid was like a 4.3. And it was just like he didn't really try. Like he won the long jump just because he decided to show up. Like that's not normal. I don't care what you take. You can't be him. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I'm not one of those people.
Manage those. Yeah, go on, Tom.
I did a video a while back with Harry Aitkins, who's a GB Olympic sprinter, and he was like just trying some calisthenics. Yeah, like probably a few years ago. Just literally a random video. He just dropped me a message and we were doing some flexibility stuff, and I was like, "Oh, do you want to try some calisthenics?" So got him doing some basic stuff, and then got him to try a front lever, and he just busted out like a full front lever. Never trained it before in his life. It's like, so he's like, "Is this how you do it?"
Far out.
You're like,
man, he is the same guy that I've seen online doing cleans at 170 kilos. His technique, like he's doing it, but his technique's a little bit off. But he's getting it.
He's just strong.
He's racking the weights.
His technique is being strong. His technique is just being strong. That's all he needs.
Yeah. He's doing it.
I mean, is there much to say about people that have that genetic gift in terms of how to scale your expectations? Like, maybe it's more just, well, they got the skill quicker than someone else. Is it more about trying to manage the expectations of people that are not genetically gifted in any way? What do you think of that? And yeah, go on.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, so I have... So as you guys know, I love planche, right? Planche is... I live for planche. But I happen to be a mutant at front levers. So for me, this is very interesting. I had my front lever within a few months of trying. I just tried it a few times, boom, full front levers. I was one of those weird guys that could just get front lever. But I didn't care for front lever. I only care for planche. But that's interesting because when you think about expectations, that totally throws your world around. Because often full planche is compared with full front lever. They're like opposites. That the one is the push, the one is the pull. And I could never understand why people were struggling with front lever, and I could never understand why there are people out there who can full planche, and there are people out there who can full planche but not front lever. That made no sense to me. So for me, I had to learn that these expectations are different per person, and the best way to establish that, just like Josh mentioned, with finding out your boundaries, in that 6 months of where you find out what your boundaries are, that's also a great period of finding out what your expectation should be. And just like how Tom said, he uses 18 months to sort of find out where they are at with their tract. That's just a great way to find out how is this person going to progress in certain areas. Some people are just mutants in some movements. Like, for example, Yuri van Gelder. Made no sense to me. I was doing a front lever. And he was like, I can't do that. I was like, dude.
Yuri is so thick too.
Yeah.
Like when you see him
when you see his lats, it's like, how are you not able to fly? Like, how are you not flying with those lats? Just do this. You could probably fly. But he could not do a full front lever, and I didn't believe him, so I got mad. I was like, you're lying to me. This is not cool. I thought we were friends. So he did a full front lever. He tried, and you were shaking like a bitch. Like, I'm not gonna lie, you were shaking. It was really hard. But if you look at his planche, easy. He never understood why planche was hard. And then he was doing the cross, and I said, how long can you hold that for? Probably half a minute, maybe a minute. That's a world record. I was like, do you know though the world record is 32 seconds? Really? Oh. That's the thing. No, that's the thing. So expectations, it's really different per person. Some people are pushers, some people are pullers. Some people are good at jumping, some people are good at running really long. And
I feel like you don't understand this until you're a coach. Until you work with more people.
Yes.
Because
so you're like,
so
why are
many
you
people
struggling
online
with
are
this?
writing? Yeah, people online will write these comments and say things like that, and all I can read them, and I'll be like, yeah, you've clearly just like you've only ever trained yourself, and that's what you're basing this entire thing off. I'm like,
100%.
it doesn't work like that, man.
No.
My biggest fear with people like that is injuries, because they, usually those people, we all talk about like muscle fiber type and blah, 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 but really, our muscles attach pretty close to the joints. So a very small change in the muscle attachment site is a very large change in the force you can produce in terms of the torque, And so those things, and when you look at like the research on like anatomy stuff where like for the lat insertion, there's a massive, like some people have the center of the lat insertion. I forget, like, I think like 1 I'd have to go look these up again, but there's like a 200% difference. Like it's like I'm probably giving the wrong numbers out, but like 2 centimeters, like 1.6 centimeters versus like 3.3 centimeters from a particular landmark, like from the center of the joint and stuff. And so it's like there are people out there with 2-3 times more leverage than another person at the same body weight, and that's why some people are just absurdly stronger than others in some areas.
This is easier to see in like movements like deadlift, for example. You'll see people with long arms. When they deadlift, that's sort of leverages on a different, like this guy here, like this guy Tom. It's more, you can clearly see it there. But then now imagine that on a muscular level, where rather than your bones being in different heights, there's also just how your muscles attach. Just that difference already can like, I don't know how my lats look like. I really want to find out what's happening, because
but you don't have huge lats, and
No,
yet you have like
the worst
monster
part.
pulling strength, It doesn't make sense.
dude, my lats are puny
Math is
compared
math,
to yours.
we're all victims of mathematics, like for better or for worse. And I would bet money that your insertions are really far out there, and that's okay. I mean, like, it's not going to be that way for every muscle.
That's okay. I just
But
hate you a
the
little bit
scary
for it.
things to me is the low leverage stuff. Like the things that don't really change are like, the things that are going to injure, like as your extensors go into the common extensor retinaculum and onto the lateral epicondyle. Like that stuff doesn't really change a whole lot. The way that the bicep inserts into the radius, that doesn't change a whole lot. And those are the areas where people tend to get injured in calisthenics, And those are the things where the stronger you are and the faster you grow, if you're not paced in certain things, then I think you run a really high risk of injury. And I know I've seen that in a couple of people. You don't run into these exceptional individuals too often, but I know a number of people, who
I don't want to mention
run into
names,
that.
but there was this one guy who suddenly appeared out of nowhere. He was 18 years old, and he was doing Malteses on rings, and he had them within a year. And this guy had it within a year, and he started DMing me. He was like, "Hey, it seems like you know a lot about the body." I was like, "Yeah," and then I checked his Instagram. I was like, "Holy shit, this guy is so strong!" And I said, "How long have you been training for?" "Yeah, for about a year." And he was doing weighted full planches, etc. And his biceps were enormous. And he was doing planche multis presses with about like 30 kilos each arm. Like I was like, "What program are you following?" He's like, "I'm just adding weight." And then a few months later, he deleted his account. And then a few years later, he got back, and then I was like, "Hey, what happened?" It's like, "I got injured, man. My biceps, they just tore."
That's what I'm afraid of.
Yeah, and that happened. He never recovered because he just got it all so easy. It just happened so fast, and his connective tissue never got the chance to adapt.
There's no warning.
Yeah, there's
People
no
don't
warning.
understand. It's not like when you get sore from a workout and then you get more sore and more sore. That's not how these tendon ruptures go.
Right.
They just happen.
Yeah,
my bicep tendon ruptured off of the radius about, I don't know, a year and a half ago or something. I'd have to look at the calendar. And it just, and it came from, I'm still pretty strong even now. And we just finished doing some construction work, and I felt good, and I was doing some barbell planche Maltese simulation stuff. And the problem with the barbell is that it puts you in a position to where you're really in bad leverage spot. Like you really can't stay slightly rotated in the way that you want to be to protect that attachment point. And I did a couple of reps and it felt fine, and I did a couple more reps, and then like on one of the reps, it just felt like everything fell apart. It wasn't even like pain per se. I was just like, I know what happened, but the bicep didn't roll up. I mean, like it was still right where it was. So I was very confused, and I'm like, what the hell? And anyway, my surgeon told me that essentially like everything was all scarred together, so it didn't move. And that's cool. And now it's back where it belongs. But one, it hurts a lot to get that surgery. And two, what the hell was I doing? I knew better. But I did it anyway. The kind of thing that I tell Yaad not to do, the kind of thing that we tell all our people, like I was the idiot. And it happens, and those are scary moments because you don't get warnings.
Yeah, I think everyone wants to be Goku. No one wants to be Master Roshi.
Yes. Right? Plus, I'm getting older, and like in my late 30s, and like, man, I don't feel any different day to day. But I don't have the tolerance for stupidity, apparently.
Hey,
my body slaps me. It used to laugh along with me.
I've got one more question for you guys, but I wanted to, we can start with Tom. Did you have any questions for anyone else in the group, Tom, while we are all together? I feel like I've been leading the conversation, but I want to throw it over to you guys if you have anything to ask to the other.
I actually don't. I've been put on the spot now.
I wasn't sure if I should just go to Tom, go to Josh, go to Phil, or just ask in general. If anyone has any questions to ask anyone else.
If you guys want to...
I feel
like I haven't heard from Phil. Yeah.
Okay, so I want to know, what was all your guys' worst injuries?
Oh, dude, why?
Because it's fun.
I'll tell you mine. My worst injury was tearing some muscles in my lower back. And man, let me tell you, I really had no understanding or respect for legit lower back pain until that happened. And it wasn't that I was trying to be a jerk. I just didn't get it. And what happened to me was I rode from my girlfriend at the time's place down to school, which was 20 minutes. I was on my bike. So, I'm bent over doing stuff. And then I go to the gym and I just did my, it was squat day. So I did squats. And my very last rep on my last set of squats, it's a planned rep. I'm not doing anything extra. I mean, it just felt like shit was ripping. And I was just and I just put I let the barbell fall onto the safety racks, and then I just kind of rolled over, and I was laying there for 10 minutes, and people are like, dude, you okay? And I'm like, no, but I'll be all right. I'm just getting it together. I definitely tore some stuff, and this is probably going to suck. So I went to the Georgia Tech gym that night with Daniel Burnham, and I was like, hey, do you see any bruising back there? And he's like, yeah, man, there's already... So you have to understand that, if you've ever been in an anatomy lab and dissected anybody, the fascia in your lower back's like this. It's almost a centimeter thick. It's very thick. And I already had, some blood coming through that. So whatever I did, I don't know. It was miserable. So the next day, I thought I was going to have to call 911 just to get out of bed. And I'm not making that up. I went to bed and I was afraid to move. It felt like there were angry people with their hands on my spinal column trying to each run away with a piece of it. It was awful. That's the best way I can describe it. I don't ever want to feel that again. I don't ever want anybody to feel that.
Okay,
yeah,
that was terrible.
I don't have anything to say, dude.
That was awful.
I would say I'll just jump in with mine because mine is lower back as well. Mine's not been diagnosed either, so I don't know exactly what it is, but it is on the right side of my lower back, kind of above the glutes, maybe around where the spinal erectors are, but maybe a bit lower. And when I do a movement, this started in 2015, that involves hip extension, it can seize the back on the right side in that lower area. And it's almost as if everything just spasms and scrunches up. And it used to take a week for that to relax again. And now it takes
Wow.
a few days, maybe 4 days with movement, because I used to rest it. And now I find that walking, just getting some kind of movement, helps to relax those muscles. I don't know exactly what causes it, apart from when it is something like Olympic lifting with hip extension, jumping, or flipping. So it all involves that same opening up of the hips. And because I'm kind of still on that journey, the best advice I could give, or what I've learned from that injury, is to try to always have intention with your movement, because I feel like whenever this happens, it's when I'm not thinking about it and I'm perhaps using lazy technique to do these things. So that's probably the best takeaway I have it from at the moment. But the weirdest thing was, this came on when I was learning middle splits, and I think it had, like, again, I don't know exactly what it was. It was like I was training middle splits and the next day I woke up with it, and my best guess is it's from trying to stay upright in middle split and coming down, but the lower back is arching as I'm down in that position, and that could have, yeah.
And you got this, like your leg, because it's so wide, the sacroiliac joint is in that closed position. It's just like a real end range contraction if you're trying to hold a middle split.
Yeah. So
You never had any kind of like brief post-workout, like almost point tenderness in the lower back?
I feel like I can. So the injury kind of just happens. Like I'll do, because jumping, Olympic lifting.
I mean, like before that first time, you never had any like.
It used to be
10,
I used to
15
have
minutes.
Very, very similar, if not the same thing, from squatting, where I would be at the bottom of the squat and I would feel it, quote unquote, go, and then I would know for the next week I'd have a fucked lower back. Yeah.
Jeez.
Tom, injuries?
Oh man. I got two. The most annoying one was when I had golfer's elbow and ulnar nerve compression, and that was just down to, again, trying to make gains too quickly. Like, I'd probably been doing bodyweight training for like a year, and I was trying to train for the one arm chin up and the one arm handstand at the same time, despite the fact that I'd only been doing handstands. I was nowhere near good enough to be doing it. My shoulder flexibility sucked, and I was training one arm chin up 3 days a week, and it was just like all of this torsion was going through the elbow. And then it was the point I was at uni, and I was washing up dishes, and I was like, this is really painful to wash up dishes, man. Like yeah. Like, and it ended up, I couldn't do any upper body training for like 8 or 9 months after that point. It was, yeah, like I was to the point where I had like a cable machine, and I was doing like 5 kilo single arm rows. That was like all I could do for like 8 months. And it's such a pathetic injury, but it was like, it's probably the one that set me back the most. But the one that was the least fun was only just back in November, when I had a subluxation of my shoulder. I was doing some meat hook work. So it's like some single arm hangs where you sort of, the circus stuff, you kind of wrap your hand around your body. And I was just like here chilling, and I could hear my shoulder being pulled out the socket. And I was like, there was almost nothing that I could do about it. I could just hear like the tendons and the cartilage like, and I was like, oh fuck, this isn't good.
Oh god.
So that wasn't even a bad injury. It was just really unpleasant to
Is
happen.
meat hook on the big 5, Phil?
That's on the free game side.
Definitely free games.
How about you, Yaad?
Fuck. Okay. So I've had injuries. Not like Josh or Tom or Philip. Oh, actually, mine was very similar to Tom. The one I'm going to talk about was in 2019. It kind of ruined my training year for the entire of 2019. I was doing really well. I was on top of my game basically, but I was nearing the higher range of volume, and I started noticing that my this area around here, like teres minor, where the tricep, long head of the triceps, and where the lat all attach, around that area, it started getting a little bit sore when I started doing pull-ups and overhead press work, and it wouldn't go away. So I had to back off from pull-up training, etc. And it got so bad eventually that I started also losing strength, and I got to the point where I could only do 10 kilo lat pull downs without feeling any pain. So I went from, during that cycle, I was doing like 70 kilo attached like pull-ups for 1 rep to barely being able to pull 10 kilo, excluding my body weight. So it's just 10 kilo, which was terrible. And I completely lost my full front lever. I just couldn't do it, which is crazy because I've always been able to do front lever since the beginning of my training, to now 9 years later not being able to do full front lever. It was the weirdest feeling ever. And it took me many, many, many months to get over that one. And I think the main reason for it was because the injury was probably gone, but I focused on the pain constantly. So I would always do the movements and only focus on the pain and be like, oh, the pain is still there, so I'm not gonna progress. And I would always use that as a measurement back then. And then I learned at some point I learned that it could just be me being paranoid. I'm probably just recovered and I'm just being paranoid right now. And so I started around the 8th month to just accept it, and I would use movement pattern and performance as a measurement to how healthy I am, rather than just the pain. I would not look at the pain. I would just look at how am I moving? Are my shoulders moving properly? Am I losing strength or am I gaining strength? And slowly, it took me about 6 months to get back to the level I was. So it was about 6 months to 8 months of being weak, not doing being really weak, not being able to do pull-ups, not being able to do 10 kilo lat pull downs, like just that, to finally 6 months to get back to my own level. So which is actually pretty fast, because we expected it to take a year or two to get back to that level that I was. So I was actually presently surprised with that one. But that was one of the worst injuries I've ever had. And it's such a shit. It's like a shitty injury. It shouldn't have happened.
They usually are, man.
Yeah.
Well, I refuse to end this roundtable on a negative note.
Can I add this on a positive note,
Yeah.
right? Everyone who has had an injury in this group, probably now you're going to be not far from, or maybe you are, the strongest that you've ever been.
Right.
Right now, despite the fact that you've had all the visas. Maybe I don't know about you, Josh, if you've got like a lower back.
I'm almost weaker than I was in high school. Oh, fuck. But I have some really awesome things in my life that I haven't had before. So, I won't say that they cancel each other out, but you have to focus on the right things, or you can just be going down a drain for no reason.
Yeah. I mean, there's the book Iron John talks about wounds becoming wounds, rebirth through injury and painful experience and all that sort of stuff. I think, unless it's really, really bad, which doesn't tend to be the case with your average trainee, given some good rehab and some good training, there's no reason why you can't still reach the high level, even with a handful of injuries. Because they do happen at the end of the day when you're pushing your body to your limit.
Right. Those are all rough.
That's the thing. I know that I'm going to end up being strong again.
All right. Ending on a positive note, guys. What is one bit of information that you would give to the bodyweight community that you think would help to improve the community as a whole? Philip.
Definitely making sure that you don't get injured. No, just playing. It would be to make sure that you keep that idea of recovery in mind. More doesn't equal more. More doesn't equal better unless it actually is something that you can recover from. So if you are doing extra workouts, but you just keep noticing that your strength is declining with each workout and you keep hammering it in, that might be a good sign that it's time to back off a little bit and maybe let yourself recover and see if those gains start coming back there. And I think it's when people start to understand that, it's oh, okay, it's kind of if I was going to order a package off Amazon and I press the order button and then the package isn't there yet, but then I'm oh, I know what I'll do. I'll press the order button again and again and again and again. Working out is the same way. You gotta wait. You gotta wait for the games to come. You gotta wait for the package.
That's
Now I've
brilliant.
got 10 flashlights at my door.
Yeah, but I don't feel like that works, man, because you do end up with a lot of stuff. A lot of the same stuff. So,
But you're broke.
At least you have extras. That's the one I would give.
Josh.
Sir, what would
do you
I?
think?
One piece of advice.
What advice would you give?
Don't think that you have to work everything hard at the same time. It's okay to focus on one or two things and just do a little bit on the others to keep yourself, happy and knowing that you're just kind of maintaining it. I think that sometimes we get caught up in this idea that if we're not working hard, we shouldn't be working at all. And I think that gets in the way,
Tom.
Oh, I just had a really good one, and then my mind went off and got distracted by something. I don't even know what.
We can go to Yaad.
oh fuck.
Yeah, please do.
Right. This one tip will get you planched in 6 months. No. Okay, no.
Just have to buy my program.
Remember, so this is for the community. So it's also in between people. Remember why you're working out. Remember why you're doing calisthenics. Remember why you're doing bodyweight training. And that's basically it. Just remember why you're doing that. Sometimes we get lost.
Don't make it into a religion.
Or
I
do
wanna
make
get
it a
my
Make
religion.
it into something positive.
Do make it a religion.
I want my dad to love me.
Yeah, I mean,
as
Jesus
long as you
Christ
remember.
was the first to do cross. Tom, did you remember yet, or do you want me to give mine?
I have remembered. I have
Awesome,
remembered.
go for it.
And it's kind of two parts. So it'd be basically a quote from my man Emmett, and it's knowing is nice, but doing is better. And I think that's just like, yeah, if you wanna, whatever it is, like, you can read about it all you like, and try to come up with the perfect this and that. But most of the time, just doing the work is probably the best solution. And understanding that work is part of a lifetime endeavor, and it's not always going to look the same or whatever, but it's always something that should be consistent. Like, it doesn't really matter if you're going to get planched in 6 months. You have the rest of your life to achieve whatever it is that you want to achieve, right? If you want to do physical fitness, isn't something that you do for 6 months. It's something you do. If you want to be planching at 70, you still need to be training planche at 70.
Yeah, exactly. Don't worry about how fast you're getting there. Just make sure you're going in the right direction.
I think a lot of us would be
100%.
bored if we hit them all. Like, if we hit all our goals tomorrow anyway, it's like, what would we do?
Do you know what? Right, I trained 2.5 years for one arm handstand, and I was so in the grind, and I got one arm handstand, and I was like, I'm bored now. What's next?
Dude, I had the same thing with planche. 6 years, and I was like, what now? What's next? I got genuinely emotional though. I don't know about you, Tom. When you hit your one-handed handstand, when
that happened, I was like, it's happened. Like, it felt like
cried.
a great weight had been lifted. Yeah, I just sat there and I was like, oh my god. Rewatched the video a few times.
Yeah, same here. I cried. I straight up cried. I was like, whoa, because it's crazy. Because you're basically doing so much work every day to perform a move. If you think about it. Oh, look, I'm standing on one hand. Look at me, kids. That's all you're doing. So
It's for something that's so irrelevant.
I thought I went nuts at that moment. I was like,
Yeah.
am I crazy? Is this why I did it? And then I sort of remembered, no, this is not the reason. It's just the journey that was the reason why I did this. And then I wanted more. So that's sort of, for me, that was the thing. But it's weird. When you achieve something you've been dreaming of achieving, it feels weird, man.
You definitely gotta remember, like, like the end, like Daniel Kahneman from like Thinking Fast and Slow. I love that book. He talks about the experiencing self and the memory self, and like, the memory self is what you look back at. That's like looking back at, like, how you felt about the plants. But the experiencing self, the person that you were being as you worked your way up to that plant every day, that was the part that you were enjoying. So like you enjoyed. I don't know how long it took you to do. Let's say like it was like 6 years. You enjoy yourself for 6 years. That's pretty good. At the end of it, you might have like a midlife crisis where you're like, well, I accomplished it, so now what do I do? But at least you enjoy yourself for 6 years before you had that one moment. Like, it's a good trade. One
Delaying
moment
the
of
inevitable.
bad, like midlife crisis for 6 years of fun is a good trade.
Totally worth it, man.
Yeah. Gentlemen, it has been a pleasure. Is there any last words you guys want to add?
I want to thank you for hosting, Tyson.
Yeah.
And thank everybody.
You're
This was
welcome.
great. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
I really enjoyed
so
this.
much fun, guys. I hope we can do it again. It was a blast.
Yeah. Next time we'll just have to start name dropping.
Yeah.
That's how you get the views, right?
Right.
That's right.
Start some internet beef.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. Absolute pleasure, guys. Till next time. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Have a good one, guys. Thanks so
Have a
much.
good one, guys.
All right. See you, Philip.